Well, I'm working with mostly pastoralist communities in north and northeastern Kenya, which are very different from other populations in Kenya because they obviously have a pastoralist lifestyle. They live a nomadic lifestyle. Some of them, they're still on the move all the time. And one of the main problems in that area is scarcity of resources, especially if the area is hit by droughts. And then people are moving around looking for water sources, looking for pasture. And so there's a lot of disputes concerning natural resources. And there's also, in addition, then a lot of cattle rustling taking place because people need to restock livestock they've lost and so forth. Those disputes are mostly solved internally, although that's very difficult because you have multiple ethnic groups. Each of them has a different system of how they share pasture, how they share access to water and so forth, and how they solve conflicts over murder cases, for example, cattle rustling and so forth. Now you have the official justice system, you have the judiciary present, and the judiciary should be taking care of implementing peace in those societies, but that has been very difficult because, first of all, the area is very vast, so it is very difficult for people to even access a court or to access a police station, or there's actually hardly any lawyers around, just to give you an example. So that is very tricky. It's also costly, it takes a lot of time, and in the meantime, you may have revenge killings going on. Nobody waits for 2.5 years, which is the average duration of a case in the Kenyan judiciary, for a case to be solved. So the judiciary is not really an option. But one of the biggest obstacles with the judiciary is the paradigm on which the official laws are based, because those are very, very different from the paradigms of the local societies. So local societies have very different ideas of what is a conflict, or constitutes a conflict at the first place. They have different ideas of how it should be solved, different ideas of who should solve it, different ideas of what the punishment should be, and what the compensation should be, and so forth. And therefore, seeking help from the official side is not really pacifying the conflict at the grassroots level. So therefore, people have turned to their own methods of how to solve conflicts. Just to give you one example, in one of the area districts in Kenya, I think it was 2 years ago, where a murder case took place, and that murder case was based on a conflict over pasture, basically, and then you have two communities clashing over the use of the pasture, and as a result, someone got killed. Now that, under the official system, that murder case would have usually gone to the judiciary, would have been tried as a criminal case. But the problem is that the judiciary would have picked out the alleged perpetrators and would have tried them for murder, which in Kenya, can result in capital punishment. But that leaves the local population behind, who actually believe that in the case of murder, the killed person needs to be compensated, which means the entire family of the perpetrator has to pay compensation to the family of the victim. And for example, one of the local societies have negotiated what that should look like, and mostly in case of a murder of a man, it's, for example, 100 cows or 100 camels that have to be paid to the victim's family. And those payments come from the entire family of the perpetrator and go to the entire family of the victim. So it's a very important social exchange that is taking place here, defining the whole society in such incidents. And only then peace prevails. Only then both communities are pacified and can continue to somehow live together in the same space. So unless local systems are applied, there's no peace. Well, as an anthropologist, I have to tell you that when you talk about the values of justice, people have values of justice, they just have different ones. Okay, they just paradigmatically contradict the values of the official justice system. And I think it is very difficult because you would really need to fundamentally change society to introduce a complete set of new values. Well, what is fascinating in what has taken place in northern Kenya or northeastern Kenya is actually that local peace initiatives have grown, and they have been quite successful, using local norms, using local stakeholders in their negotiations over conflicts. And this has been picked up by international NGOs, by donors, and it's even been picked up by the government themselves. So the Office of the President in Kenya has been supporting the peace initiatives in those areas. And that has led to more formal negotiations where in certain areas communities have come together and have negotiated sort of a common rule basis, because, you know, consisting of different ethnic groups, they obviously had different values, and that has made it difficult to just simply apply informal systems or customary law. So what they have done, they have come together and negotiated. So what has happened is different communities have met and have negotiated a common rules basis. And that has been written up in the form of a declaration. And those declarations have been signed off and published by the Office of the President. And this is very interesting because this obviously contradicts the formal system. But it is the only way of reaching peace in those areas. So here you have a real dilemma between introducing peace or allowing peace or enforcing official justice. What is basically happening with the declarations, with people negotiating their own declarations and with communities creating peace committees and so forth, and government officials taking those up, is that a parallel legal regime is being developed. And as this is all taken on board by the Office of the President, and the latest idea is actually to turn these initiatives into a policy framework on peace building and conflict resolution that applies nationwide, that really shows how it's basically the development of parallel legal systems, or at least the declarations are like a parallel penal code that people have developed themselves. And I think it's a fascinating example of where your rule of law, your official system, just does not help social realities to create peace. There are people actually going out and creating their own law at the very grassroots level. And I think that's a fascinating move. I'm not necessarily advocating for it, but I think it really should be a warning to us that we cannot come with our Western paradigm of rule of law and just try to implement it everywhere, because it may not have the same effect.